bring in Geoff Mosher, though, from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, as he joins us live on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Some breaking news today with the Eagles. Mosher, I don't know, Nolan Smith on the injured list, and this one kind of crept out of right field, right? I mean, there was no talk about this when the game was over. So, number one, the impact in your mind of losing Nolan Smith. We talked about the pass rush on Monday. Hard to kind of quantify it. As you did research after your hit on Monday's show, they didn't have a lot of third and long pass rushing situations. But how effective will this defense be without Nolan Smith?
You know what? Nolan's a good player. He does a lot of the dirty work as an edge rusher. You know, he's good against the run, takes on those pulling guards really well. We're only 3 weeks into the season. I thought he played well against the Cowboys, decently against the Chiefs. You know, and again, the Rams game was not really a game meant for pass rushes. The Rams really ran the ball quite a bit and faced very few third and long scenarios. So obviously you miss a guy who's a starting edge. I think the Za'DariusSmith signing now looks really, really wise by Howie Roseman. And the way he's been able to play and the number of snaps he's been able to play without having a training camp or an OTA, he can get in there next to Jalen Hunt and give you that two-man rotation or two-man starter. And obviously Uche will work more in. Maybe you'll probably, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if you see Ojolari up now or Ubo Okonkwo or maybe even Patrick Johnson for special teams. I don't know. I don't know if you're going to see that much difference of a rotation other than Vic will go to 3 and he's got Jalen Hunt and he's got Za'Darius Smith and he's got Josh Uche right now. And that seems to be doing the job, but certainly it will be tested this week because the Bucs have a beat up offensive line. And if we're talking about the pass really not getting home for the Eagles, then we're going to talk about the injuries and just the overall pass rush state of it.
So how do you think the snaps kind of go? I mean, you had Jalen Hunt before. It was kind of like Za'Darius Smith, Jalen Hunt. You know, does Hunt flip side? How do you see them replacing Nolan Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I think Za'Darius Smith steps into that role, and he starts opposite Jalen Hunt. Now, Hunt is still coming along, so it really opens up the door for Uche to get more playing time. And, you know, I don't know if it's going to be like a 33% snap share among all three, but it wouldn't surprise me if it looked like that at the end of the game, or even if they got a fourth in there. I'm curious to see if Vic does anything differently because of this adjustment to the heat and humidity. They're flying out Friday. They're trying to acclimate. I did feel like they got worn down last year. Now, they also got worn down because they were on the field so much because they were a completely different defense. You guys remember that. They couldn't stop anything for that game. This game, you would think, will be different, but I am curious to see if for this game and in that environment, if Vic does want to get an extra edge and maybe even an extra interior alignment active to be a part of a rotation.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. It's our football at 4 every day at 4 o'clock. We give you Eagles football, and the Eagles today, Nolan Smith, placed on the injured list. He wasn't the only one, but probably the most important one. When you look at the Eagles defense, where do you put Nolan Smith in terms of the importance to what makes their defense what their defense is?
Ask me that again. You're asking me how important Nolan Smith is to what the defense is?
Yeah, if you lost Myles Garrett, your best edge rusher, that team, that messes them up big time. Where is he in terms of the Eagles' defense and what they want from their defense?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I never want to minimize anybody's injury, but I don't think it's as I don't want to get snake bit by saying this, but I don't think it's as impactful now as, say, if the Eagles lost like Quinyon Mitchell, right, or even Zach Bond, only because things are
right. And that's essentially what I'm asking there is it seems that it feels like they can handle losing him more than Jalen Carter or Quinyon Mitchell, right?
Yes, I think so. They should be able to, and that's the whole thing. I mean, you look at it; they've got 5 edge rushers, a 5th, 6th. I won't say 7 with Patrick Johnson. He's mostly a special teamer, but between Hunt and between Za'DariusSmith and between Uche and between Ojolari and Okoronkwo, they've got that's 5 right there, and 6 would be obviously Nolan Smith. But they've got a bunch of guys who played NFL caliber edge and have had a certain degrees of success. So it is an area where they've got some bodies. What they lack, though, and this is where your question fits in, and it might have been a question even if Nolan Smith is healthy, is do they got a dog 12 to 13 to 14, 15 sack kind of guy like you've seen from either Hassan Reddick or, Josh Sweat has been a really menacing guy in the past. That was the question going into the year about it. So that's why it's hard to really know how much they're losing with Nolan, other than we know that they're losing a pretty good player. But a game changer, I don't know. And the guys that they're replacing him with are theoretically guys who've done some things in the NFL too.
Yeah, and by the way, according to reports, is a strained tricep. He's not getting surgery. This is from the Super Bowl. He aggravated that injury. He had the tricep surgery a week after the Super Bowl. He aggravated it. So the plan is to let him rest and return after the bye. So I guess, Moshe, there is no guarantee that he makes it all the way through this season, that this couldn't be a factor somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I mean, we're learning a lot now about this injury, at least I am. I mean, because Brandon Graham retore his, after the Super Bowl, right? Because so he wasn't fully ready to return. He put it all on the line to play in the Super Bowl. Did great, and then wound up re-tearing the triceps. And now you're seeing Nolan Smith, who was medically cleared. Now, let me be clear on that. He was deemed 100%. He was, I think, wearing a sleeve at some points earlier in the spring. But, I mean, he was cleared to go and has been playing, re-injure the same area. So it's clearly one of those injuries that is tricky and can be aggravated pretty easily.
Moshe, obviously he wasn't the only guy. Jacorian Bennett and Darius Cooper. Cooper, obviously, a smaller role. Bennett doesn't have a huge role, but also Adoree Jackson got banged up last week, had a groin. Now, he did practice, I think, today. But you're starting to see the battle of attrition come in here for Philadelphia, and you wonder, is Kelee Ringo the next guy? They did also elevate Eli Ricks, and if you wonder if that spot is going to eventually, you feel like you got your thumb in the hole and you're just waiting for the leak to spring.
Yeah. Actually, I think with Eli Ricks, they just brought him back to the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. He's on the 53. The guy who got signed to the 53 was Mark Sets. But I think it's interesting. Vic said something the other day in the press conference that was sort of like maybe scratch. I didn't know what to make of it. Somebody asked him about his cornerback depth, and he made a remark that he told Kelee Ringo that to not get down on himself, that he's going to have to play a role. And at the time, this is just maybe yesterday or the day before, I'm thinking, when is he going to play a role? I mean, he's buried behind not only the 2 starters, maybe it was you who asked me on Monday, but not only 2 starters, but also the number 3 corner, and then Macri Williams. You never know what was going on there. But, you had Bennett, you had Adoree Jackson, and you had Quinyon Mitchell. But now I feel like Vic was basically foreshadowing to us something that we weren't going to find out until today, and that Kelee really might have to play a role, especially since Adoree got banged up a little bit in the last game.
By the way, Nickerson is the one that was elevated. Ricks to the practice squad, Nickerson to the 53. All right, so today Nick Sirianni just spoke a little while ago, and, he was asked about what are you seeing on film in the running game. You're starting to hear a lot of the questions about how conservative they are. They're getting blitzed a lot here. Is this like something that you think is like busting at the seams, or do the Eagles say, don't care, we'll be as boring as we want to be?
No, I think the Eagles are smart, and they can see the trend that's been developing of how teams are playing them with 2 deep safeties on first and second downs and coming after them. I mean, when you see a team like the Rams, who were blitzing at 12%, which is one of the lowest in the league, I think 3rd lowest in the league, all of a sudden doing things that they were doing and blitzing at close to 40%, you know that other teams are trying to do something different. So you can't just do the same thing. And I'd be really, really surprised if they came out and just tried to execute the same play calls that they have been in the same order and thinking everything's going to be fine. It wouldn't surprise me if they felt the need to come out throwing a little bit more on first and second down to open up the run game instead of vice versa like they've been doing.
All right, Moshe, you got a tough game this week. You obviously two teams 3-0. Buccaneers, they've been winning close games. The Eagles have been kind of scratching and clawing here, but this is the Jalen Hurts 1-4 against the Bucs, including playoffs. But he's had a lot of different reasons why they've lost this game. Is this a bad matchup for them, being on the road here, circumstance those losses in the past, or is this Bucs team another team that could give you problems?
Well, they can definitely give you problems. The weird thing is, it just seems like neither team, when they play this game, this is about, you know how we talked about the Cowboys game where it's almost infrequent anymore that Jalen Hurts gets to face Dak Prescott. Well, it's almost infrequent that the Bucs and Eagles play each other without having, massive amounts of injuries. The Bucs offensive line, if you look at what their starting offensive line, what was intended to be and what it will be on Sunday, you're going to have all 5 linemen in a different place than where they were originally intended to start.
Jeez.
Because of 2 or 3 injuries. Yeah, and then of course Mike Evans is not going to be able to play. So, by the way, let me amend that. If Tristan Wirfs does come back and play, he'll play left tackle. Then that will be one of the 5 that is supposed to play where he's supposed to. But we have to see if he makes it there. Same thing with Godwin. So they're beat up on the O-line. They lost Elijah Cansey, a really good defensive tackle for the season, I think, and then. They're just, beat up at wide receiver with Evans and maybe Godwin not coming back. We'll have to see that. And like we just talked about all the injuries that the Eagles are dealing with. So first of all, it's still 2 really good teams, 2 undefeated teams, and 2 teams that have really kind of cornered the market this year on figuring out ways to win games, like gutting them out in the fourth quarter. So it's always going to be fun. I think the weather clearly will help favor the Bucs, but the Bucs aren't throwing the ball around like they did last year when Baker had more than 40 touchdowns. They're almost more of a defensive team, and they're not running the ball very well. So it almost feels like both these teams go into this game sort of like, man, we're 3-0, we're good, we have a history of being good, but we'd really love to correct our mistakes pretty quickly here,
Yeah, well, and you look at you mentioned it, the fact that they have these weapons in the pass game, and they're not having the same success throwing the football that they have. Yet they're still 3-0. I wonder how much the Eagles took from that second half, and kind of look at that as a kind of a. You might have been the one that said that. Were you on Monday saying that this is like the game where they kicked the 61-yard field goal? It's kind of like that jumping off point to the season, kind of like finding a groove in the season. If that second half offensively makes Kevin Batula feel a little bit more confident in his abilities to kind of unpeel the onion to a different layer a little bit.
I think as a staff, they have to think that way. I don't think they really have much of a choice. And I think if they want Saquon Barkley to get some guys out of the box and off of him, able to be the run team that they love to be, they do have to throw the ball a little bit more. And I taking that a little further, Mike, I think that means that even if because the difficulty of that is that you're sort of playing into Todd Bowles' hands, because Todd Bowles wakes up every morning at whatever time, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and the first thing he does is draw up a blitz. That's who he is. He can't stop thinking of different blitzes, and it's not the same blitz. He's not just going to throw you like a 5-man rush with a linebacker, right? He's going to put like 7 guys at the line of scrimmage, only send 4, drop 3. I mean, he just messes up your protection scheme. He's brilliant, honestly. I watch a lot of tape, and some of the things he does are mind-boggling to me. I just have all the respect in the world for how he does it. So it's hard to say, I want to get my pass game going this week, when you know that means you're going to have like all these bodies like flying at you left and right. But I think the important thing for the Eagles is not to view any kind of early struggle as a reason to not throw the ball. Like you're good at it. And yeah, they're going to come at you, but so are the Rams. So if you can, you might take a sack here, you may get an incompletion, a hurry throw, but hey, if you can hit 2 or 3 down the field to Brown or Smith, then you make up for that. And I do think that they've got to figure a way to do that.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time. Like if you put this offensive talent in other systems or other teams, like it almost feels like they would score like 35 points a game, but for whatever reason they choose not to be that team until they feel like being that team. And it's almost like we have this feeling of you can't just flip the switch on whenever you feel like it, but the Eagles say otherwise, right? They're just like, we can if we feel like it.
I mean, they've done it before. I mean, sometimes they do it week to week. Last year they had a couple games where it was like, oh my God, what are you doing offensively? The quarterback is not like seeing obvious receivers open right in front of him, but they, somehow gut out away. And then the next week they play the Steelers. They come out throwing, no huddle, up tempo. Hurts completes like 70% of his passes. Brown deep, and you're like, how is it that you just did that against the Steelers, who have one of the best defenses, yearly every year? Not this year, but in general. But you couldn't do that to like the Jaguars or something. The last three teams you played. I'm done sort of trying to figure it out, like when it's going to happen and when it's not going to happen. I think that game against the Rams is about as good of an example of, what you might think it's never going to happen, and then bam, it comes in droves, and then vice versa. You may think, all right, this is the week. Playing the Cowboys, they're all beat up in the secondary. They're going to, and then they struggle. So who knows?
Yeah, fans watch games and people watch games, and the observation is that in your mind, you are thinking of how to win every game the best way possible. And sometimes these teams are lining things up for 3 and 4 and 5 weeks down the road, right? And it's like, hey, we didn't practice this group of plays this week, so we know we have it in our arsenal, but we're just not using it right now.
Yeah, it would be nice. Nice to pull out something the opponent hasn't seen, because it seems like opponents are doing that to the Eagles, left and right each week, trying to hit them with something that they're not expecting.
Right.
Yeah,
the Eagles are stubbornly like, well, we have this in our back pocket, but we're not going to show you because we still think we can beat you without showing you that.
Yeah. Listen, I think sometimes when you're a success, the Eagles have won 18 of 19 games, right? So going back to last year, which is, in this day and age, that's incredible. Crazy. Like, I'd have to go back and look and see if the Patriots did that under the Tom Brady area. I know they went undefeated one year, so maybe they probably did, but that's what the company that we're talking about here. And so it's hard for them probably to hear somebody say, hey, you got to switch it up and try a few different things. But, clearly you do. Yeah. You always have to evolve. You always have to adapt.
Well, and the question, the last question that Sirianni got asked today was the disconnect when you hear the word conservative, that there's a disconnect from, the fans of and by the way, AJ and Hurts using that word, and the Eagles coaching staff saying, I don't know, I don't see us as conservative.
Yeah, but I also think that they're just not trying to feed into any narratives right now. I really think that. I think you also heard him say, we keep, what we do in house, we have a plan, and
right.
So I don't really put too much. I don't think of right now that this coaching staff is at odds with its personnel on what they want to do. I do think there are times that the coaching staff wants to play to the strengths and eliminate the weaknesses of the personnel. So they do what they do, and sometimes the players may not like that, You've seen the players finger point each other in the past. Like, we should be doing this better. No, we should be doing that better. That happens over the course of a season.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Check that out on all podcasting platforms, InsideTheBirds.com, and every day on Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. They're going down a day early, too, Moshe. Maybe they'll hang out down on Clearwater Beach and get themselves some grouper sandwiches.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I've heard that there's some establishments on Dale Mabry that people like to go to. Hey, real quick, Mike, on Philly Voice, either later today or tomorrow, and then even on Inside the Birds podcast, I really took a real deep dive, because Greg Cosell said on Inside the Tape, which came out today, that Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter did not play well at all in run defense, which is ironic because he said in the first half and into the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, totally different, and obviously those two guys won the game by blocking the field goals. But then I went and looked at it today. I looked at 17 runs that the Rams had that were 5 yards or more, and Greg nailed it, man. Those guys were getting really pushed back, driven off the ball, getting out of their gaps. Very interesting. You can't do that against the Bucs. They like to run the ball. They've struggled with it this year, but they're going to continue to try and do it, and it's going to be hot. You can't lose your technique and your leverage, like I saw Jordan Davis do on tape quite a bit in the first half, when that heat settles in. So something to watch for.
Definitely good stuff. Check that out at Philly Voice. By the way, there's a Darren Sproles jersey in the house. You see that? You don't see that every day, do you? Nice, a little Darren Sproles jersey in the house. By the way, real quick, Moshe, I brought this up earlier. I want to get your take on it before we leave. Nakobe Dean is supposed to come back, next week or the week after? Could they possibly use Jahad Campbell to utilize him in a Nolan Smith way?
I mean, we have to see first, because Nakobe Dean has to do a lot. He'll be able to be back, but he hasn't even been practicing. It's not like he's going to come back and then just get on the field. This guy has not been able to do anything all throughout the spring and the summer. So he's, in my mind, he's going to need a couple of weeks just to get himself back into shape. And at that point, I don't know if you're going to want, depending on what the Eagles are doing, you don't take a first-round pick who's playing well off the field. Like you said, do you move the edge? Maybe, but I don't know that he's going to be any better at the edge right now than what they're getting from the three guys. But there's certainly some opportunity that potentially could exist. But the number one thing that has to happen is Nakobe Dean has to show he can still play that position well coming off another big injury to the lower body area.
I always remember Micah Parsons, his rookie year, when they had to move him as an edge rusher out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
I guess that worked out well for Micah.
Yeah, they never moved him back. They never moved him out of that role, really. All right, Moshe, we'll catch up with you on Monday, man.
All right, take care.